Great. So all recorded. So welcome, guys, to November's edition of Coach Athlete Q&A. So usual, we've got four topics this evening. We're going to aim to spend sort of 10, 15 minutes on each one. Some integration with the guys who have logged on, but then also it's a great one for me to effectively present, hopefully educate. Um, let's say, do a few myth busting exercises that we've done before, and where others can then just log on onto YouTube where this is going to be uploaded as well. And if we need to follow this up, we will do it in December. So the first topic is the balance between overhydrating and underhydrating. And this is in terms of electrolytes and water intake. So, firstly, massive topic this, overhydrating and underhydrating. Obviously, we all know the symptoms of underhydrating, as in being dehydrated. But sometimes we don't know the symptoms of being overhydrated. And by this, I mean, actually, it's you secreting electrolytes in your urine. So you can be drinking too much for the amount of, let's say, sodium that you put into your body to prevent things like cramping or energy drop, so other electrolytes, not just sodium. And because we are effectively overhydrating, we can then be losing these electrolytes in our urine by overhydrating. So, in terms of electrolytes and water intake, this is where right in the early days as a performer, before I actually started wearing decent kit with GB on it and things, was getting it massively wrong. And this isn't to kibosh any brands out there. It was just personal experience this that I'm talking about. So I obviously knew the importance of sodium intake to prevent things such as the major one, cramping, that we all need salts, certainly in endurance-based sport to prevent these. Now, what I was doing is I was using these electrolyte tablets and I was using the high 5-0 tabs. And I was putting one tablet into best part of 500, sometimes 750 mils of fluid. And I thought, right, if I consume that, I'm going to perform better. What I didn't understand was the amount of sodium content per the amount of fluid content I was drinking was massively wrong. And I think with both of you, Mark, Sarah, as my guys, and we see each other locally, as in where the gym is anyway. I'm sure we've talked about this. But for those that we haven't, high 5-0 tab was something like 125 milligrams of sodium per tablet. And I was having best part of 500 mils of fluid per tablet. And what I was doing, one, I wasn't ingesting enough sodium anyway per hour. And two, I was massively over ingesting the amount of fluid content. So, me under ingesting the sodium for what I needed, I was then doubling up by peeing out those electrolytes I was putting in because I was drinking too much. So, pretty much, I was almost, to put it metaphorically, at net zero. There's pretty much pointless having the tablet and also then drinking that amount of fluid, thinking that I was going to prevent cramping. Obviously, ingesting that amount of fluid was good because for me, it was making sure that I didn't dehydrate. So for me, what I was massively getting wrong is I didn't have what's called a sweat test, where a brand that I now use and they have supported me when I was doing stuff at age group with GB and then things at Ironman. Really lucky to be supported by that brand. And I've shared sort of insights and I've also shared supplement content with you guys in the past, and I will continue to do so. Is that I had a sweat test done. Now, in that sweat test, we actually calculated I was sweat in however many millimoles that they were testing reflected how much sodium that I needed to ingest per hour. Now, I'll talk back to that high five tablet, which was 125 milligrams. It was calculated that I sweat over 1,350 milligrams per hour of sodium that I lose. Now, for me, I massively needed to make sure that I was on top of that. Otherwise, cramping would start. But also, what was key is Precision Hydration as a brand have worked out it's not just how much sodium you have, it's also how much sodium in milligrams per the amount of, let's say, milliliters of fluid you consume as well. And I go to the fact that it's super salty and super concentrate. Because let's say in a 350 ml bottle, which is the small ones that you'd run with, I was having best part of the sodium intake that I needed, which was just over 1300 milligrams. So to anyone else drinking that, and also for me, it was like, whoa, that's quite concentrate here. But what I was doing was I was replacing the amount of electrolytes that I was using and burning, but also having sufficient amount of fluids in that intake per hour, which was gonna see me through. So by which I mean if I'm in a long distance race like an Ironman, I'm obviously ingesting the subsequent amount of sodium that I needed to prevent cramping, but I was also controlling the amount or monitoring the amount of fluid intake that I would need. Now, obviously, this is heat dependent as well. If you go and race, let's say, in Kona, where it's really hot, or this year, the Ironman in Frankfurt was off the scale, where it was even a non-wetsuit swim in Germany in June, which is a bit frightening and which caught a lot of people out. Um, I was making sure that I wasn't over hydrating, and therefore, in the middle of the course, I'm not then having to unzip my tri suit, obviously, zips at the back, trying to peel it down, and then go into the Portaloo every sort of 10 to 15 kilometers and then effectively disrupting my race and my rhythm. So, having that sweat test, and again, the brand is called Precision Hydration. I worked out how, or they worked out how much sodium intake I needed, or via how much I lost in my sweat. And that was a reflection of per hour. And then also, they calculated how much fluid that I would need with that sodium replacement as well. Now, if I go back to what I was doing when, hey, I was a complete novice and we've all got to start somewhere, and that's something as me as a coach that I really embrace when I start with athletes like yourselves on the call or the ones listening to this recording. It's making sure that we start somewhere and we're not afraid to start somewhere, and also that we're not embarrassed by it because you have to start to gain experience, to gain knowledge, to improve performance, and also to become sensitive and aware of your surroundings, the stimulus that you effectively click to and that you don't click to. It's all part of the journey. Sorry to sound cliche. But when I started, I was 125 milligrams of sodium per hour. What I needed was 1,350 something milligrams per hour. So you can see that I was massively under the intake of sodium. But then also, it was worked out that I need something like 415, 425 mils of fluid per hour, and I was having best part of a liter or 750 mils. So I was over hydration and under electrolyte intake, and that's where it went completely wrong for me. But hey, we avoided any dehydration because the amount of fluid that I was getting. But I did have to stop for a pee a lot. So that's effectively the difference between overhydrating, underhydrating in terms of electrolyte and water intake. So those on the call, obviously feel free to unmute yourself. It'd be really good to hear your viewpoints here, and I'll be happy to expand upon any of your points. Yep, we all good, Mark?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if Sarah was wanting to.
No, you jump
Sorry,
in.
can I? Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. Sorry, you go, Mark. Go.
Yeah, no, I mean we talked pre my last outing about my salt intake, which I hadn't really given. During the training, I was taking what I thought was electrolyte replenishing fluids. My battle with the last run I had was more around, and I think I probably did over sort of fluids. I ended up having to go to the toilet too much. So I mean, I didn't have, I had concerns around mile 22 around cramping and things starting to sort of, come in at that point. And so I'm just wondering whether there's an alternative to, maybe having that sort of, almost a litre of liquids, and is there another way of getting salts without necessarily, if the weather's not particularly over. I mean, I think I need to probably look at getting a sweat test, to be honest, because I think I end up drinking too much, and I don't know that with my diabetes whether that has another impact as well.
Yeah, I mean,
An excessive.
100%, Mark. Being a diabetic athlete, you will be struggling here with the amount of fluid that you are ingesting. And obviously, let's say if you're battling against glucose, for example, as a performer, and what sources that you're getting energy from as well.
Yeah,
But to stick to your point there, um, as regards taking salt in or intake of sodium without the fluid, that's a really important one here. And that's something that sometimes gets me out of jail
yeah,
when I'm in a race. So I know I don't want to be drinking anymore because I can already feel quite full, let's say, in my bladder, and I'm starting to become quite sensitive to fluid intake. And I'm really starting to watch how much, let's say, sips of Coke or even just sips of water that are going in my mouth when I'm running through or walking fastly through aid stations, let's say on a long course race. And then sometimes, even if it is Coke, which is gross because you become a sticky mess, you start bailing out of actually sipping any more fluid because you just don't want to stop the rhythm that you've got. So that water or fluid, sticky or non-sticky, actually just goes over your head, which is a bit gross. But the way to get out of jail here is precision hydration. I'm sure other brands and that, hey, they're not paying me to be labeling their brand here all the time, but it's just a brand that I use, and they support me. They do their blister packs of sodium capsules. Now, in each capsule, you'll get 250 milligrams of sodium per tablet. And it's like a little, let's say, an anodine style tablet
yeah,
or a Nurofen or something like that. It's like a plastic cap type affair. It's called blister pack. So all you do really is I always keep two or three of those in transition, because for me it just gets me out of jail free. If I can just, let's say I've put a few really hard efforts in on the bike, and I'm really starting to feel my legs in T2 as I'm running out onto the run course, and I just know how my legs are feeling as opposed to how I want them to be feeling. I will just swallow two or three tabs, and that's easily either 500 milligrams or 750 milligrams extra sodium intake without taking the fluid on board. So I think that will be a really good get out of jail free card for you, Mark.
okay, I'll have a look at that definitely.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially during the winter because you just don't. I don't feel as, I don't sweat a lot at all. I really don't. And yeah, a sweat test would tell me that, but I just know that I don't have a need for sort of too much excessive fluid. So
Okay.
okay,
Sarah, have you got a point?
yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It really was highlighted to me when we were out in the Tour de France this year because of how hot it is and cycling in that heat. And I became acutely aware that I really didn't know how much I should be taking in. And then at one point, we ran out of the hydration drink and stuff we were using. But David and I are at opposite ends of the spectrum. He sweats huge amounts, buckets and buckets of sweat. I don't sweat a lot, but I think my understanding is correct, is that that doesn't necessarily equate to how much sodium you lose. We might both lose the same amount of sodium, even though he's losing a lot more fluid and sweat.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably important that we do a sweat test for those kind of environments that we're in. In my racing, my longest race has been a half marathon, and luckily I've never had an issue with cramp, and I've taken the gels on, and I've had water and fluid, and I basically I've just winged it. But certainly when we're cycling out there in that heat, I think it's really crucial, and a sweat test is something that we'll be doing. I'd seen something. There's a new little device coming out where it gives you real time data on sweat and sodium loss. I'll send you a link to it, Steve. You know I like my data, but it looked quite interesting.
Okay. Again, it's a good point that, and it's certainly something that is easily confused where people, performers, athletes, the novice, whoever, whatever level you're at, if you are sweating more, you feel as though you need more fluid or you need more sodium. Now, that isn't the case. Your body is just really efficient at cooling. So that is part of the thermoregulatory response there to exercise. Now, and we all sweat at different rates. But the
Yeah,
key here, the key metric is how much sodium you are losing in that sweat per hour. So, Sarah, for example, you could sweat a lot more than what I do in an hour, but you may lose 800 milligrams of sodium and I'm losing what I am over 1300 milligrams, but I'm sweating less than you. So it's
yeah,
definitely worth getting a sweat test done. And what I will do is I'll make it readily available in the group, and I'll follow up on this call here to to, for a link to get these sweat tests done, really. And there is a guy who worked for Precision Hydration who is quite local to Harrogate, and that's where I had mine done. So it'd be quite a good little local thing, and perhaps it'd be really good if we do a call like this again, even if a December one, and potentially we could actually get Andy on the call as well or we set up some form of team like mini conference or presentation by Andy about the importance of. So leave that with me, but I'll do it. Okay, so brilliant. Thanks, guys. And that's a great way to tick off first topic to get the night going. So this is pretty much going to be answered quite quickly as soon as I read it, and it links very well to the topic we've just discussed, hence why it's in here. But it's ways to prevent muscle cramping during races. Now, obviously, the what we've just chatted for the last sort of 25 minutes is obviously sodium intake, salt. But it doesn't always come down to that, okay? We all know about how tightness of fascia or soft tissue and obviously reduction in range of motion in joints. So, such as your gait, your running gait, if you become quite tight in the hamstrings, that can tighten up your hips or your pelvis or trunk region. You then start to run a bit shorter as regards stride length. And all of a sudden, we're then relying on other muscle groups that don't normally take the hit there. And effectively, the percentage of ratio has changed with, let's say, the muscle groups that are absorbing impact and the ones that are using to effectively develop force, effectively like propulsion. So the minute we become quite tight, whether or not we start a run or a race quite tight, or if we tighten up during a race, that is obviously one area here. So muscle tightness and reduced range of motion at a joint site are all going to be linked along with sodium intake or lack of, or not enough for that muscle cramping. And then also here, you've got what I experienced in my last Ironman was it was actually skeletal, but it was muscular skeletal. It was how tight my lower back was in the swim, and it was quite a feisty swim. There was close to 3,000 people in quite a small lake, and we just did two quite thin rectangles. So you imagine a bold rectangle outline, and the actual rectangle that we swam, we were quite narrow. So yeah, best part 3,000 people swimming in quite a thin rectangle shape. There was a lot of fighting and elbowing and kicking around what was 7 90-degree turns around buoys in that rectangle. Sorry, it's quite stretched, a bit of a weird rectangle. And it was 2 laps, so that then effectively made it 14 90-degree turns around buoys. Now, what I didn't understand is obviously to be swimming over people, to be holding your own ground in the water, obviously to swim with a wetsuit on, where the wetsuit is going to bring, with the buoyancy, is going to bring your legs up close to the surface. You actually become hyperextended in your lumbar spine area. So I was effectively, we all swim with a wetsuit quite extended through our lumbar region. Now, you imagine trying to lift yourself over other people. to cause that lift where you bring in your shoulders, your arms, your chest out the water, changing direction, sighting, etc. Or even if you just have to put the gas on for 10, 15 meters just so you can get some clean water, we all go through hyperextension. Now, what I had going into my latest race was clearly some tightness in my vertebra, in my spine. And that had come from previous historic injuries that I had suffered. The only thing that I didn't do this race was I didn't get checked out by my osteo. And I normally get musculoskeletal treatment, so on my muscles and on my spine, whether that's my neck all the way down to lower spine. I didn't get that done. That's the only thing I didn't do. And man, did I suffer. 30 minutes on into the bike, I hit cramp in both legs, and both outer quads and hamstrings felt like boomerangs. And hey, I'd only done an hour and 8 minute swim. It's nothing too invasive there, hardly anything going through the legs, albeit obviously the kick, which is relaxed in a swim. But for me, it's not as though I'd already done 180k on the bike with the legs. And 30 minutes in, so what am I roughly? I was almost just shy of 30k an hour, so 15 kilometers into the bike, both legs cramping and relatively flat on the taxi onto the course. And that was me for the next 6 hours, 18 was cramping in both legs. So, ways to prevent muscle cramping: make sure that muscular skeletal systems are being looked after and maintained. It's not just about muscle groups here, it's about the skeleton and the vertebral joints themselves. We've already talked about reduced range of motion in joint sites, but also, I mean, your spine is made up of vertebral columns here. So, cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. All different, all your spine, but different areas of your spine, and all have vertebral joints. They are all joints, they are designed to move. And if joints do not move properly, we either have friction, we have pain, or we have no movement. And all of the above will cause some form of pressure, irritation, or pinch slash trauma to a nerve root, which then feeds, whether it's upper periphery, such as arms, chest, back, lower periphery, upper legs, lower legs. All these nerve roots feed different parts of the body, a bit like roots of a tree or branches of a tree. And my legs instantly started cramping 15k into a bike, which was sustained for the rest of the bike, 6 hours 18, and then the marathon run, which was a hilly course as well. And my legs were absolutely fried. And all because my back was not looked after before the race. So for me, ways to prevent muscle cramping: it's adequate hydration, adequate sodium intake, it's making sure that we are on top of our mobility for our soft tissue and fascia, so contractile, non-contractile structures, and also look after our skeleton. Make sure joints are moving properly. That includes your spine. Anyone want to add anything to those points? Yeah, perfect. Okay, brilliant. That was a really good topic, and hey, more than happy to expand upon as well. So, topic number 3. So, the correlation between lower back pain and hamstring quad ratio. Again, some answers are going to be quite easy here because they're just linking to some that I've already expanded upon in the previous topic. So, correlation here: lower back pain and the quad hamstring ratio is very apparent. So, if we have really tight hamstrings, we are then effectively going to be having a tilt in our pelvis, and it's going to be tilting backwards. All right. If we then, so a posterior tilt, if we have really tight quadriceps or quad tendons, i.e., hip flexors, we are going to have a tilt forwards with our pelvis or an anterior tilt. Either way, it's then going to change the shape of our lower lumbar region. And also, it then may start affecting thoracic, like mid back region. If it becomes untreated and it creeps up on us subtly, and it becomes therefore chronic, i.e., over time, where if someone was to have a time lapse on you for 3 months and it was a side on view of you in your ensuite every morning and they stitched all those photos together and you started to see yourself sort of curl up over time, therefore chronic because it's happened over sustained time and it's always increasing in pattern and symptoms then start being produced, i.e., for the first couple of months, you just feel a bit stiff. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you can't move. You've then got quite irritable nerve related symptoms, spasming down the legs, coming up the arms, radiating into hands and feet, or we just can't seem to straighten up as we're walking. I call it the goose bum. We're all waddling around like a goose, and because you feel as though your ass is stuck out behind you, okay? Or we're walking around as though we've got a steel rod up our back, okay? All of a sudden, it'll just happen, but it actually has been happening over a number of weeks and months. Therefore, it's called chronic. Unless, of course, you have an accident, trip, fall off the bike, God forbid, or something like a car accident, or let's say you've done a really long run, like an event on the Sunday, and all of a sudden we're waking up Monday, Tuesday, and we're effectively dealing with back pain. And it will all be because one of the go-tos is what are your hamstrings and your quadricep lengths like? Are we reduced range of motion in our hamstring length? And are we reduced range of motion in our quad? So we're looking not just extension, we're also looking at flexion here as well. So the joint sites involved will be knees and pelvis. And they all have a big part to play in the health of your lower back. Also, I would be looking at, let's say, the big sheath of muscle either side of our body. So, effectively, just coming up over our rib cage underneath the fat layer of our skin called the serratus anterior. If we become really tight in that region here, rotation is then going to suffer. And again, we've already covered in a previous topic your vertebra, your bony landmarks in your spine are all joints. They're designed to move. Now, rotation is one of the movements that some areas of our spine are designed to do, and there's some that aren't. Okay, different areas such as thoracic and lumbar. Cervical obviously can rotate, thoracic, and then lumbar. It's quite hard to rotate through your lumbar. You're actually rotating through thoracic. So from here, it's then making sure that that muscle group, which is over all of your vital organs, your abdominals, linking into your rib cage underneath the fat layer, it's making sure that that isn't restricting movement as well, i.e., being too tight. A really good example here is let's say we've just had a chest infection or we've been coughing for best part of 2 weeks. We all know what it's like to take a really deep breath in. It's actually quite hard. It's like someone's bear hugging us around our chest and our rib cage. Part to play here will be not just intercostal muscles because you've been coughing, so rapid expanding of rib cage and then constricting again, but it's also that serratus anterior. Because if we're not feeling very well, we're obviously going to be putting our feet up. We're not moving. So periods of inactivity here are going to lead to increased stiffness and reduced range of motion at joint sites. So obviously, if serratus anterior becomes quite reduced in range or movement ability, then so is our ability to work through range, which then reduces range of motion in those vertebral joints in our spine, which then link to quad hamstring ratio. If they're tight, for example, it's only going to exacerbate these symptoms. We then start feeling a lot of pressure at the base of our spine in our lumbar region. Anyone want to dive in here and give us own accounts or what we've dealt with?
Yeah, I mean, I suffer because of a 30-year-old injury on my lower back. I suffer with sort of pain there that tends to be sort of relatively managed. I do find the mobility work helps. Is there any other sort of um, treatment we can do at home for ourselves that you would sort of that you would recommend, particularly to help with that tightness that you sometimes get in the lower back, that can lead to, I think at the moment, I think probably because I'm still coming back from that marathon, I'm still getting a bit of tightness in my hamstring.
Yeah.
But
So
I do think a lot of it is back related.
yeah, I'd say here the biggest pitfall with, let's say, people self-managing lower lumbar or tightness or pressure in their lower back is they go to extend. So they start sticking their chest out and sitting upright. Now, actually, going into extension, you are just closing the gap between those lumbar vertebrae even more. So effectively, you're just increasing the pressure there. In my eyes, me as a practitioner through clinical experience and also clinical reasoning and what's called pattern recognition, i.e., giving people treatment plans and treating them in a clinical setting over the vast amount of almost a decade, for me, that pattern recognition is you need to be exploring flexion. So imagine you are kneeling on the floor and there's a big blow up stability ball in front of you, like what a pregnant lady would be bouncing around on, okay, nearer the time in the maternity ward. So big, I mean a really big stability ball, like a gym ball that you'd blow up, okay? Imagine you're kneeling and you're facing it. You want to hug, so put your arms over the ball and you want to effectively just passively hug and lean over the ball. Okay, so you are still supported, your knees are on the floor, but going into that forward flexed position, you will feel release at the bottom of the spine there. So that's one way. So explore the flexion, not extension. And then also, if you were to, let's say, hang off a chin bar, okay, you are then promoting what's called longitudinal traction, not just in the arms and into the glenohumeral joint, your shoulders. You'll feel a nice release there. But if you then start gently moving and rotating those knees left and right as you are hanging straight arm, nice and relaxed, you're not doing a pull up, you're just holding there, just gently relaxing left and right knee rotations underneath in the air whilst you are holding a chin bar. So underneath your arms, you will feel, and it'll probably take 15, 20 seconds before it becomes quite obvious. You will feel a really nice sensation going through your spine, which will then help to reduce that pressure.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
key here is we're trying to open the space between the vertebra and the facet joints. We're not trying to close the space, such as extension. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Brilliant. No problem. Awesome. So we're now going to be moving on to final one. So this one's a really good one, okay? And apparent pretty much for all of you on the call here. So we've got an Ironman, we've got a marathon runner, and then we've also got a good for age runner as well for half marathon. So how do you integrate strength and conditioning or S&C into endurance training without compromising performance? So hey, a lot of people hear the word strength or strength and conditioning or gym work and they think, oh my God, I'm going to get massive, I'm going to get really heavy. It's going to affect my running ability because I'm just going to become really tight. Body weight's going to go up. So strength to weight ratio will obviously reduce because I weigh more. So the race is going to be harder because I'm shifting more load. It is not that at all. That is another myth buster here. S&C is all about the function. If you are truly with a coach or training by yourself and you've really drilled into the function of your sport, such as running or a multidiscipline sport like Ironman, long distance triathlon, it could be football, it could be rugby, it could be player specific. So you are a prop in rugby, you are a winger in rugby, you are a midfielder or centre back in football. If you've really drilled down into your functionality as an athlete, as a performer, whether you're a professional or amateur, novice, who cares? If you are trying to replicate movement patterns, movement ability against load or resistance, or at least going to challenge you in some way on the movement patterns that you are required to do come game day, race day, whatever, You are effectively in the world of strength and conditioning. You are not weightlifting. Okay. So, for example, one of the biggest things for runners is all about knee health. It's making sure we're not running, excuse the pun, we're not running out of road before our knees start to grumble at us and we've got typical symptoms such as runner's knee or what's called iliotibial band syndrome, ITBS, or patellofemoral pain. Okay, all common associated pathologies with runners. Now, here, if we were to really drill down into strength and conditioning, it's just going to prove to you how actually going to the gym or committing to strength and conditioning is actually going to benefit and improve performance, not hinder it. So, if let's say on this example, we are dealing with ITBS, it could be because that's on the outside of the knee where the IT band, iliotibial band, inserts into the knee, into the lateral condyle. We could be falling in on the knee. We could be what's going into knee valgus. So we need to develop our VMO or a vastus medialis. Okay, so our inner quad, the teardrop shaped quadricep at the inside, the medial part of our knee, just above it. So a lot of runners will tend to drop in with their knee when they are landing on the floor. Their knee just buckles inwards, okay? And that is either down to lack of strength through their VM or VMO, and or it's either over tightness or weakness in their lateral stabilizers at the other end of the leg, the proximal end. So your glute medius, your glute maximus, your proximal vastus lateralis, your VL, your lateral quadricep. So on the side of your hip, where if you were to put your hand on your bum, that region there, we're either too tight or we're too weak there. Or if you put your hand on the inside of the knee, inside of the leg, we are either too weak in that region and it's causing that knee to shift in. Now, by doing so, if the knee does fall in, we are then taking that iliotibial band, that fascia, to already an extended position because your knee is flexed. You've got a bent leg when you land on the floor. So your legs or your muscles in your legs, up in your thighs, are already extended. The minute we straighten the leg, those muscles are reduced, okay, in length. But of course, they're contracted. So the minute our knee is flexed and we're landing or falling in running, those muscle groups and fascia are already extended. If that knee falls inwards, we are then overextending. We're asking more of that, let's say, the iliotibial band, that fascia, because it needs to stretch further because the knee joint has moved or fallen inwards. So it's taken it already past an extended position and then effectively overextending because the knee joint is moving inwards away from where the iliotibial band originates, which is at the top of your hip. So imagine a piece of string. If you were to put your hand on the side of your bum, that's where it starts. So that's where the piece of string starts. And if you put the other piece of string at the bottom of the leg on the side of your knee, if you just imagine now how long that is by looking down at your leg, and then if you move your leg inwards, can you see how that piece of string would then elongate a bit further? So we are then effectively asking it to overextend past its already extended limit. Therefore, we are getting effectively irritation at that joint site, irritation at the insertion of the iliotibial band in the lateral condyle of the knee. And any irritation, it's always got itis at the end of it. Okay, iliotibial band syndrome or patellofemoral or tendonitis, any irritation, it's always got an itis after it. And what we get from that, it feels hot, it feels angry, we might have some swelling, and God will you know about it when you're going up or downstairs, i.e., when you are asking it to extend, or you're contracting your quadricep muscles, therefore putting load and stress through that fascia as well. I hope that sort of makes sense there. But if we were to effectively drill down into how we're going to get away from that pathology of, let's say, iliotibial band syndrome, how we're going to deal with that, if you were to develop that inner quad, so put your hand on the inside of your leg above the knee, that area here, if if you were to develop that VM to stop the knee falling in, we are then reducing the stress and tension that we are applying on that fascia, that iliotibial band fascia. And also, if you put your hand on the side of your bum, side of your hip, we are then also reducing the load and tension in that region as well. So further up the chain, okay, where the origin is and where the insertion is. All by developing strength and muscle bulk. Doesn't mean that you're going to get heavier. It just means we need to increase density of the muscle fibers, i.e., to develop the strength of that area on the inside above the knee, your vastus medialis. So that is just a really quick way of how strength and conditioning will benefit and promote performance rather than hinder by going into the gym by S&C work such as single leg split squats or i.e. like Bulgarian split squats. The leg is behind you. Whether this is body weight only because we are endurance-based runners, we don't want to be loading too much. Or if, let's say, we are dealing with an irritated ITB, we do need to put some load there. So we are not treating this quite light-hearted. We need to be quite aggressive in the soft sense of the word to make sure that we are shifting the irritation away. Things such as single leg pressing, so go on a leg press machine, and all you want to be doing is just moving that foot outwards slightly. So we are really tackling that inner quad, that VM. And it could also be a seated leg extension with your foot wrapped around a band, a resistance band. So you're getting some challenge and contraction of the muscle group that you don't normally or wouldn't normally get by not using a resistance band or a weight. So we're challenging it. And that is you effectively committing to a calculated and moderated strength and conditioning program, which is purely to enhance and benefit your function, in this case, as a runner. Anyone want to add anything to that?
I know. I mean, you know my journey from my injury. All I can do is just, as a mere novice, is endorse, that from my experience of, suffering from the dreaded itis that you refer to, and having that pain to, and yeah, it was a horrible thing to come back from, because of no strength and conditioning, and that was, me trying to attempt to do things that my body just wasn't prepared for, and over the last sort of, 8 months, whatever it's been, in doing, S&C work, huge difference in my shape, strength wise. And my weight is not any different whatsoever. I'd probably say after the marathon, I've lost a couple of kilos and I haven't put it back on yet. But that gave me a total different experience in a race that I didn't have before. And I wasn't worrying about and thinking about, you know, shin splints or knee pain or anything like that. It just gave me the confidence, to be honest, to not even think about those things. And it helped me enjoy the experience more than anything. But I've loved it. I've loved doing the strength and conditioning that
Great.
I never did, and being a 50-year-old weakling, suddenly to have the ability to be able to get the body to do things that I just couldn't do before, which is fantastic for me personally. So thank you.
Well, it's really refreshing to hear, Mark. Thanks very much, mate.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just second that. There's no doubt about it that being stronger has 100% got me back from injury, and just, feeling stronger and being able to do more. And like you said, Mark, it's not about putting weight on. I mean, to be honest, to put to put muscle and gain muscle in that way, you've got to really go some to actually bulk up. It's a bit of a myth that doing that strength will make you too bulky and then detract from your performance. I think it's a nonsense. And actually I've just got a lot stronger and just so much better with it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, well done, Sarah, and long may the hard work continue, eh?
Absolutely.
Cool. Stevie, all the way in the Netherlands. Are you on? Are you okay?
Yeah,
Nice to
no, just
meet you.
back in from a little bit of a walk. So appreciate it, guys. I was listening to you guys. I didn't want to show you my dark view while I was walking with my wife, but yeah, I just got in. But I was listening to the whole thing. But this subject, more importantly, is like probably keen because yeah, we don't have a bunch of 20-year-olds on the call, right? So they would say, yeah, I want to just go run, 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 run. But we can't do it when we're 35, 40, 50 and stuff. So strength training and strengthening your joints and your mobility and stretching is where it's at. I mean, you should feel excited to have a training session where it's in the gym on the schedule as opposed to going for a 10K run. And so, because then when you do go for a 10K run, it's only going to feel that much better because we can't run 10K every day, right? But so that's what I've noticed as I've progressed in my training, and I had to kind of shift gears because I was always a hit the pavement person since I was 30, even 40, pushing 45. I'm trying to change it a little bit, but yeah. So strength training, you guys have to look at it on the schedule and be excited for it. And I try to put, and I'm the same way. I'm trying to put more of it on my schedule and say, hey, I need to reduce the biking, need to reduce the running and focus on really making that a priority because that'll be the longevity. So going out. So
Perfect. Or just think any S&C work, whatever it entails, whatever function we're trying to challenge, it's all about increasing your tolerance to the demands of your function, the demands of your sport, and also to increase the resilience of you and how you react and respond to those demands. Okay, so see it as a bit of a shock absorber. So the more strength that we can develop, the more suspension that we're putting on a bike to handle the amount of impact and demand on our body in whatever plane of axis or whatever movement is associated. So great stuff. Thanks for the contribution tonight, guys. It's been really good. We do still have a few other people who are on the call, but they're just literally listening to it like Stevie was earlier. But this has been the most people from the athlete body of ours who have logged on. So it's been fantastic, really, really good. It will be, again, the first Wednesday of every month. So let's have a big finish to the end of the year and the first Wednesday in December. And I believe that is the 3rd of December. Yeah, Wednesday, the 3rd of December will be the next coach athlete Q&A. And let's even maybe have a Christmas theme one. So Christmas jumpers, baubles, whatever you want to wear. Let's maybe we can turn it into a bit of a competition with prize for the best dressed. So I'm just going to stop the recording.